Cheat on me with my best friend? I'll wreck your career and publicly humiliate you. Sam and Sarah have been like family to my wife and I for several years, practically ever since we moved in across the street from them. The four of us were extremely tight. Our kids are at the same age as theirs, so we are all good friends. We were one big family unit. We did dinner together a few times a week. We went on vacations together. I truly saw Sam as a brother, and my wife and Sarah were very close too. 5 months ago, I was completely blindsided by the discovery of an affair between my wife and Sam. My wife had left her email open on our computer, and I saw an email from her to her longtime therapist saying that Sam would be joining her at an upcoming session again. WTF. My mind started racing. Why in the world would Sam be going through her therapy sessions without my knowledge? I did a search and found some other emails to and from the therapist proving that Sam had been going to sessions together with her for about 6 weeks. I checked her mobile phone account and discovered that, since late summer, they had been exchanging hundreds of texts every day, peaking at nearly 500 per day by the holidays. Speaking of the holidays, my wife and I hosted both of our families, parents, siblings, etc., for both Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner, and Sam and Sarah joined us either for dinner or after dinner on both holidays. Text records show that the entire time they were at our house celebrating with our families, my wife and Sam were texting each other across the room. They were doing that pretty much every time the four of us hung out, for months. And, all day, every day, just in general. But what bothers me the most is that they were doing it with Sarah and I right there. I confronted my wife with the evidence and she admitted that yes, she and Sam had fallen in love. It just happened. I don't know how. But I love him and I just don't feel anything for you anymore. I'm sorry. They had gone on a school district trip together. Something had happened in her hotel room, and things had moved quickly from there. She explained, as I lay face down on the couch, unable to look at her, that they had already made plans to move out and divorce me and Sarah, and while they didn't plan to move in together immediately because of the kids, they'd probably do so eventually. The meetings with the therapist were supposedly mostly for the purpose of finding a way to break this to me and Sarah as gently as possible, because they were so very concerned for our well-being. My wife moved out 2 months ago. I was, and still am, utterly destroyed. I cry every day. I cried writing the first few paragraphs of this story just now. I worry nonstop about the impact on our kids, but I am also not exactly a shrinking violet when I feel that I've been wronged. And in this case, I was, objectively, very, very wronged. So, a couple of years ago, Sam ran for a Board of Education seat as a pretty extreme underdog. I helped him with his campaign materials and debate prep, and my wife, a well-known school district employee, this becomes important later, got the word out as best she could. Much to our surprise, he actually won in a squeaker by just a few dozen votes. Being on the board became the center of Sam's world. He joined every committee that he could. This turned into the foundation of his affair with my wife, as they were constantly going to school events and meetings together on evenings and weekends. Once I discovered the affair, my thoughts turned pretty quickly to revenge, and it occurred to me that an extramarital affair between a member of the Board of Education and an employee of the school district was at least bad politics and possibly violated district policy. Making things far worse for them was that my wife was in the running for an open administrative position, and everyone knew that she was more or less guaranteed the job and the major pay raise that came with it. She had just finished her master's degree in school administration at the urging of her principal and the superintendent so that she could be promoted to the specific position. I had plenty of evidence of the affair, texts from both of them admitting to it, text records showing that they were texting hundreds of times a day, emails to and from the therapist, etc. I considered simply emailing all the evidence to the board and the superintendent, but felt like I, as the grieving betrayed spouse, might not be seen as a credible source. So instead, I invented a fictitious, furious friend who was planning on showing up to the next board meeting and publicly shaming the two of them for their affair. I told my wife I tried to talk this person down, but couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't show up and humiliate them publicly. As I expected, this led Sam to conclude that the only option was for him to preemptively admit the affair to the board. The superintendent subsequently recommended that Sam resign, which he did. Sarah said that he was utterly humiliated and crushed, and barely got out of bed for a few days afterward. Once word of the affair and Sam's resignation started getting around, the superintendent, a longtime friend of both my wife and Sam, contacted my wife and tearfully informed her that it was no longer politically appropriate for her to be promoted to an administrative position within the district. The position that had been lined up for her was later filled by an outside candidate. This sent waves of confusion and rumor throughout the district, as it was pretty well known that my wife was getting the job. The day after she was informed that she wasn't getting the promotion, my wife and I, despite our crumbling marriage, took our son out to breakfast together on his birthday, and a parent stopped by our table to congratulate her on her new role. She said thanks, then excused herself to go cry in the bathroom for a while. I let the dust settle for a couple weeks and then, right before my wife moved out, let them in on my little secret. There was never a furious friend threatening to expose them in the first place, just me. Word of all this had gotten around our fairly small town, which Sam grew up in and my wife has worked in for nearly 20 years. My wife refuses to talk to me about how things are at work now, but I've heard from some people I know in the district that our formerly spotless reputation has taken a major hit. Sam, formerly a gregarious social presence in our neighborhood and at events and pubs in town, has completely gone underground and barely emerges to mow his lawn. He's moving out soon, to a little townhouse which is all he can afford due to all the child support he's going to have to pay his wife. My wife and Sam claim that they plan on trying to make things work together, despite all the public humiliation. I wish them lots of luck with that. I'm sure it will be a lot of fun to show their faces together in town. I think it's great that you found out about the affair and exposed it to the world to prevent them from progressing in life. It is the least they deserve. They could have just told you about what was going on, but the fact that they hid it for so long shows that they had no intentions of telling you or Sarah. It must be pretty embarrassing for them now to know that their dirty little secret is out in the open for everyone to see. Hopefully, this whole experience will teach your wife some valuable lessons about being more careful about who she sleeps with from now on. As for you, I hope you can reach the point where you look at all this and say, wow, I really dodged the bullet here, because your wife does not deserve you. It is much harder as you have kids together, so I understand why you get upset regularly, but I believe you'll do a great job without her. I left my cheating ex-girlfriend homeless. When I was about 30, I was 6 months into a really good committed relationship with a woman in her late 20s. She became pregnant, moved in with me, and 9 months later we had a son. Immediately after giving birth, she went crazy and we found out she was suffering from postpartum psychosis. I had to hire a nanny to babysit this crazy woman and keep her from hurting my son. After 8 months in hell, I had reached my limit and decided to take her to court and sue her for full custody. I looked for advice from a few friends who had been through bad divorces, and one of them said I should get a DNA test before going to court. I asked why, and he said that his cousin had witnessed something, but didn't want to get involved without knowing if the kid was mine or not. It turns out that just before getting pregnant, his cousin and my girlfriend went on a drunken bar-hopping bachelorette weekend with her girlfriends. My girlfriend ran into an ex-boyfriend at one of the bars, had sex with him in the bathroom, and then went back to partying. So I secretly took my son in for a paternity test, and 4 months later, I got the results. I was not the father. I cried on and off for days, just barely holding it together so she would not become suspicious. It was a lucky coincidence that my girlfriend, her family, and my son were going out of town for a few days to a family reunion. My girlfriend's parents lived nearby, and I knew where they hid a spare key. So after they left, I packed up all of her and the kids' stuff in garbage bags and left it all in her parents' living room. I also left a copy of the DNA test and a long letter explaining how she cheated on me and all the crazy stuff she had done in the last year. I was renting a nice house in a nice neighborhood, and a friend was always telling me he wanted first dibs on my place if I ever moved. I called him, and he jumped at the chance to take over my lease. I told the landlord my story, and she was okay with my friend moving in. I packed all my stuff in a U-Haul, quit my job that I hated, and left. I found better work in another state and never looked back. I told my friend that he needed to change the locks ASAP because my girlfriend was going to freak out when she came back. I also asked my friend to tell my now ex-girlfriend that I had simply moved into an apartment across town, not that I had left the state. Everything else I heard from my friends after I left. So, a few days later, my ex comes home and can't get in the door and flips out when my friend opens it, but won't let her in. She calls the cops and is in the process of raising hell and yelling at the police when her mom calls her and tells her that all of her stuff is on the living room floor and she needs to go there right now. My friend said it was like watching an episode of Jerry Springer. It's hard to believe that someone you know could be capable of something like that, and I'm so sorry that this happened to you. I don't understand how someone can cheat in a committed relationship and then go on to let you believe the child is yours. I'm glad you managed to get yourself out of the relationship and get some slight revenge on her. It must have been really hard finding out the kid wasn't yours. I hope you find someone who you can settle down with and start a loving family. My ex lied to me about being divorced, so I ruined his reputation, marriage, and job in one blow. When I was a naive 24-year-old, I met a charming, very smart, and way older man. We call him Jake for the story. His sister is Dana, and I'm Gina. Jake was 42, recently divorced, or so he told me, and got a kid he would see the weekends. We met online through a poetry website where both of us used to write. He was very aloof and stern on his comments and not very popular on the website because he used to always come off like an arrogant prick, but I really liked his poems regardless of his personality, and that's how it began. I commented on one and he instantly messaged me back praising my writing and asked me if we could collaborate on a duet together. I've already done it 1,000 times with a few friends and people on the site that I respected, so I said sure. So long story short, we met on Hotmail Messenger. This was nearly 11 years ago, kids. Long story short, we instantly connected. He was funny, handsome, and really sweet underneath all his bravado, and his dark sense of humor was right up my alley. We spent months pulling all-nighters just talking and writing together. Not humble bragging, but I was pretty popular on the site because I won a few awards, so by association he became popular too. People started to read Jake's poems and commented, and obviously he got a huge head about it. But I digress. Our relationship became more serious after he confessed that he was falling for me and I was smitten, so I went along with it. We talked about my recent breakup and he assured me that he would never lie to me because the witch of his ex-wife cheated on him and he was devastated until he met me. I was shocked for how bad the ex was, but assured him that I was all in, and I meant that. One important detail about our turbulent romance is that he was in South America and I was still living in Italy in my hometown. So, after almost 2 years of excuses for how tied up on work he was, I decided to surprise him with a visit. I bought my ticket and it literally was like a dream. He picked me up, we kissed, hugged, and he took me to his beach house, which would have been my first red flag, but I was dumb, young, and in love. Saying that it would be so much easier and fun for me doing touristy stuff on a beach port than staying in his suburbs house with no car. Because I told him in such a short notice, he didn't have time nor the means to take time off. Which again, blatant lie, because he was one of the partners of the company. But again, I bought it, and off I went on my own almost for the entire week I was there. He only spent one night with me, and the rest of the week he would just pick me up from wherever it was that I ended up wandering, and we hang out for a few hours, have sex, and then he just drops me off on the house. The day before I had to get back to Italy, he took me to dinner, with his 6-year-old son and his sister. I was super happy to meet his family and son, but got caught off guard when he just introduced me as his friend from Italy dropping on town for tourists. His sister was super sweet, albeit a bit awkward, and his son was adorable. We ate, talked, and off we went. He picked me up first thing in the morning and dropped me off in the airport. Now that you got the full story, I'll get to the good part. 2 days later, and still a bit jet-lagged, I got a very interesting email from his sister Dana. Her email was short and very simple. Dear Gina, I know that you might think I was weird and maybe a bit rude when we met, but it was only because I was tricked by Jake to join the dinner with his kid. He never mentioned that you guys were dating, but after confronting Jake, he confessed and begged not to tell anyone or his marriage will be ruined. But you're such a sweet and young girl that doesn't deserve his deceit. Jake is still married and never left their home. Dana sent me pictures of his real Facebook profile and surprise. The perfect little family. I thanked her and shut down my computer. I was devastated. I really thought that Jake was the love of my life and was seriously considering moving there. I spent all night crying and drinking wine until I get myself the worst migraine. But the heartbreak lasted about 12 hours. At 4 a.m., I got up, shower, make a pot of fresh coffee, and started planning my revenge. I was hurt, yes, but also so angry that he not only deceived me, but dragged his sister and his innocent child in his lie. I was at the other side of the world, and I didn't have the money to pay someone to kick his ass or egg his car. But as my Sicilian father would say to me, if someone slaps you, don't turn the other cheek. Cut off their bloody hand. And so I did. I sat down on my desk and turned on the computer and logged in his Hotmail. I didn't have the password, but I knew him well enough to answer the 3 security questions on the section Forgot Password. 1, 2, 3, boom, baby. I'm in, and holy moly. This arrogant piece of human crap was not only dating me, but 2 other girls. I quickly logged onto his Facebook too, because he had everything linked. So I quickly changed all his passwords to I'm a prick, and discovered that his personal email was also connected to his work account. I dug through his emails for 2 hours. This idiot never erased anything, so he had more than 5,000 emails. Until I found something very interesting. The girls he was also seeing and their very hot email exchanges. Nude pictures included. So, what did I do? You guessed. I crafted a very lengthy and explicit email with pics and chat logs attached confessing to Jake's wife, posing as him obviously, begging for forgiveness and declaring how much of a terrible person I was, and as a proof of my willingness to change and transparency, was sending this email to the girls too, but that I did it only because I was a closeted gay and thought that being a player would help me forget how much I really loved guys, that I was sick of pretending and hoped she could move on and maybe be friends. But not only to them, I copied his entire list of contacts, including the CEO and partners of the company he worked and his parents. This email was perfection. All the pictures and chats he ever exchanged with any other women. I copied myself on the list, obviously as a countermeasure. What a horrible, awful person he is. to be deceiving girls that are much younger than him to fall in love whilst he has a wife and kids at home should be a crime. The way you handled this was very impressive. I know it must have been difficult to do something like that, but you executed the plan to perfection. I hope his wife never forgives him and finds someone better than him to look after her and the kids. As for you, I'm sure that you've learned a lesson from this to not trust people so easily. I, 30-year-old female, realized I may have mistakenly accused my boyfriend, 31-year-old male, of cheating after we'd been broken up for a month. About a month ago, my boyfriend, now ex, went with his co-workers to a bar/club. Mostly a bar with typical drinks and bar food, but the place has a dance floor and music after work. This is something they do every couple months or so, but this time, when he came home, he had a lipstick mark on his shirt. I asked him where the lipstick mark came from, but he said he had no idea. I thought he may have been cheating on me with someone from work or someone at the bar. He was wearing his dress shirt from work that day. I've been cheated on in the past, which in retrospect might have made me think irrationally. But the couple days after that, we fought several times due to me repeatedly questioning him about that night and him denying anything had happened. I also snooped on his phone and computer to find evidence of cheating, but didn't find anything. But he caught me snooping, so we had arguments over that too. Long story short, I called him a liar and a cheater, broke up, and moved out the following week. The whole time, he insisted he was innocent, but I figured he was playing dumb and gaslighting me. Last night, I got dinner with a friend I hadn't seen in a while and told her about the breakup. When I told her about the lipstick, she gave me a concerned look and showed me a TikTok video of a girl at a club kissing random guys on the back without them knowing and leaving lipstick marks. Is this some sort of TikTok trend? As far as I can tell, the person who posted the TikTok is in Australia, but I live in Los Angeles. The lipstick on my boyfriend's shirt was on the upper arm/shoulder area, so I suppose it's possible someone could have come up behind him, kissed his shirt, and walked away without him noticing. I just never considered that to be a possibility. I wasn't able to sleep all night. I've just been racked with guilt that I may have been mistaken in accusing him of cheating. I thought about sending him an email or giving him a call. What do I even say? Before the lipstick ordeal, our relationship was the best one I've ever experienced. It was healthy and supportive. I realize in retrospect, I may have treated him unfairly by not giving him the benefit of the doubt, and I said some nasty things to him when we broke up. And there's also a small part of me that wonders what if he did actually cheat on me after all? If I bring up this TikTok, wouldn't an actual cheater jump at the opportunity to use it to continue to deny cheating? I'm afraid I may be overthinking this. I feel for you. I would definitely give him a call or send him an email if it's been a month. What if he was innocent and just didn't know about the lipstick thing? It might be worth bringing up the lipstick thing just to clear things up between you two. And if he's not interested in talking to you, then that's okay too. He doesn't owe you anything. You have no idea what really happened, and it wasn't your place to accuse him of cheating in the first place. You don't have to explain yourself or apologize to him either, because that would make things worse than they already are. But like I said, just bring up the lipstick thing to clear the air. My 850-pound revenge on my cheating, thieving ex. When I was at uni, I started dating this guy. At first, he was wonderful, dedicated to his studies, fun to be around, attentive, and always surprising me with things, working hard at his job, etc. Then, bit by bit, things unraveled. He started skipping classes. Then he barely bothered to go at all. Worse still, he never helped around the house. Never washed up, cleaned up, did laundry, nothing. He was even fired from his job for too many no-shows. All he wanted to do was sit at home and play Xbox or browse the message boards and forums. This was in the days before social media, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. This lets me having to pick up extra shifts, sometimes double and triple shifts, all while going to class and studying. I later learned that this was a pattern for him. He'd be really dedicated to whatever he set his heart on, but then get bored and fall back into old bad habits. Then he'd find a new passion and rinse and repeat. I knew I should have ended the relationship much sooner, but I held out hope that he would snap out of it, that maybe it was just exam stress getting to him. I desperately wanted things to go back to how they were, but it was not meant to be. I caught him cheating and threw him out. I was so stressed with everything that it wasn't until the next day that our joint savings account crossed my mind. There was a little over 5K pounds in there, and bar a few hundred from him, the rest was money I had saved. I checked the account, and it was all gone. My ex had cleaned out the account and moved into a new flat with his side chick. I called the bank. There was nothing they could do. He was authorized on the account. I contacted the police. They told me there was nothing they could do since it was a joint account, so nothing criminal had happened. They suggested taking it to civil court, but said I'd probably spend more money than I got back in legal fees, so it likely wasn't worth it. My ex had stolen 5K and there was nothing I could do about it. I felt like such an idiot. I got even angrier when I saw his posts on various forums boasting about his new game consoles, new games, new TVs and gadgets, all bought with my money. I'm not usually a vengeful person. Petty on occasion, sure, but I've never wanted to exact revenge as much as I did right then, and I knew just how to do it. While I was a student, I temped every summer to help pay for my studies. One such job had been a debt collection agency. The work was as bad as you can imagine, but it paid really well, and it was only for a few months. My ex had been dodging debt for many years, and he was very proud of that fact. He was also proud of the fact that his debt was close to being statute barred and he hadn't paid a penny. For those of you who don't know, in the UK, creditors have about 6 years to collect a debt, and then it becomes statute barred. That means the money is still owed, but creditors have no legal way to enforce payment, such as using bailiffs. My ex was a few months away from reaching statute barred status. However, what a lot of people don't know is that making a payment on the debt resets the clock. If you pay any amount, then that 6 years starts from scratch. Previously, I'd used my insider knowledge to help him dodge the debt. Now, I would use it to hit him where it hurts. By the end of our relationship, I was handling everything, including his debts. I had the paperwork, so I knew who he owed and how much. I called his creditors up. I was honest and said I was a friend calling to make a payment on his behalf. I didn't pretend to be him because that would be a big legal no-no. They weren't allowed to disclose any details, but they were able to take payment. I paid the minimum I could on each debt, about £1 on most, but one had a minimum payment of £1.50. It was the best £8.50 I have ever spent. I also made sure to give them his new address and contact details, as well as his parents' address. Having worked in the biz, I knew they wouldn't change the address since I wasn't the account holder, but they would note it. They had various systems where they could search for his name against that address and see if anything came up. If they got a hit, they'd change the address. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait. A few months rolled by, then it happened. His post on the forums went from boasting about his new gaming PC to panic about a court date. He called me and begged for advice. I told him to F off. Seeing I couldn't help, he asked for advice in the forums. One of his online friends told him not to turn up to court. That way, they wouldn't be able to prosecute without him there. It was terrible advice that was 100% untrue. In fact, not showing up is one of the worst things you can do, especially in civil court. This was getting better and better. The court date came and went. My ex, naturally, didn't go. A few weeks later, my ex posted photos of his empty flat. Bailiffs had cleaned him out and taken every last one of his shiny new gadgets and toys. On top of that, he ended up with several county court judgments. These are a big deal and can seriously damage your credit history, making it hard to get bank accounts outside of basic ones, near impossible to get credit, including getting a mortgage, and it can also make it hard to rent a place, since many landlords don't like renting to people with county court judgments, as they're considered high risk. He also won't be able to find jobs in the financial sector. Now that he was broke and didn't have nice things, his side chick left him. I never got my $5,000 back, but it felt good to see everything he bought with his ill-gotten gains taken away. Hope that $5,000 was worth it. For anyone wondering how Student accrued 6 years of debt, he started at the university I attended when he was 25. He had initially gone to a different university at 18 but dropped out at 19 and went into the world of work. Then he convinced his parents to fund a business degree. He wanted to become an entrepreneur. And for anyone worried about the age gap, I deferred my uni start date by a few years so I could travel. I was 22 when we started dating. He was 26. I can't believe he would cheat on you after all you were doing for him. But in a way, I'm glad he did, as this is what finally made you get rid of him. It's frustrating that you will never see the $5,000 again, but damn, you handled this situation like a true boss. The way you went about getting your revenge was perfect, and I'm sure he's learning a big lesson from all this now that he's broke. I hope you don't let anyone take advantage of you again in the future, as you are worth much more than that. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Check out the other videos on your screen right now. Otherwise, you're definitely the jerk.